Hi and welcome to our London Fashion Week Spring Summer 22 roundup. I'm features editor Hetty Mahlich and I'm joined in the car by fashion critic MC Hill.
Hello.
So we've just left the Charles Jeffrey show, which was in a nightclub, and we're very hot.
Deep heat, deep sweat.
But I think, you know, that's about to be followed by a massive party, which we sadly are not going to because we've got to film this and then I'm off to Milan in the morning. So we're being a bit boring. However, ending London Fashion Week with a massive party definitely bodes the question, was return to a physical fashion week justified? Do we feel satisfied? And that's kind of, I think, what we're gonna go into. So Charles, as I say, we were just at in a nightclub in Farringdon. Everyone had to have an ID to get in. We were kind of led through, there were performers outside, led through this nightclub. You could smell the kind of old beer on the floor. It was quite nice to kind of be back with that horrible smell somehow.
Yeah. Had a real concert feel.
Yeah, definitely. Charles started his brand LOVERBOY as a night.
Yeah.
When he was at CSM many years ago. And we were led upstairs to a first show by Bradley Sharp, who you were at CSM, and he's just left.
Yeah, graduated last year. And Bradley kind of does these big tent-like silhouettes, pyramidal, kind of tent-like, and we kind of saw some of that today, but we saw a bit of growth from him in doing these kind of like, oh, what is that show? Housewives' Tale?
What, Desperate Housewives?
Not Desperate Housewives. It's like handmaiden-y.
Oh, The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah. It felt like he had kind of handmaiden silhouettes with a little late 60s Balenciaga Cristobal mixed in there. And so it kind of set like this weird kind of puritanical grandness. And then we would go in for the hedonism. We were led into another room for the hedonism, so it was a really interesting setup.
And there were performers, models kind of storming down the runway.
Yeah.
What was quite nice is that there was no seating. Everyone was just mixed in the same bunch. No editors put in special places. Everyone was kind of standing, lining the runway, which was devised by laser beams.
Yeah.
The slight downside to that was that we couldn't really see much.
We could not see anything.
So I'm looking forward to actually seeing the images after, because what I could see from the torso up looked really interesting.
Yeah.
But this kind of segues in really nicely to the idea of performance, which really kind of actually came in a lot more to the idea of the physical show this season, which was nice because it made having a physical show and holding one feel worthwhile.
Yeah.
We kicked off London Fashion Week on Friday with Saul Nash, who is a London menswear designer who was looking at the idea of the modern British school playground. Saul very much draws on his own upbringing in London in his work. Does a lot of amazing kind of shell suits, track suits, which are then have these kind of zips which reveal underlayers, and it's very much about this idea of movement and drawing on Saul's background as a dancer. But this was probably one of the most, it was my first Saul show, and I found it very emotional and personal. As I say, about this idea of the modern British school playground. There were Just Do It bags, which if you grew up in mainly London or England, you kind of know as the kind of resident school backpack. There were kickers, there were prints which were made from Saul's bent Oyster card, which is, if you don't know, it's kind of the travel card that, and if you're under 16 you get free travel in London. And then there were these themes of kind of PE uniforms with shorts and shirts, again with these slashes, and then logo socks. And then we had a bit of Stephen Stokey Daley, who's also looking at British school, but in a slightly different way.
Yeah, when you consider both what Saul Nash did and what Stephen Stokey did, they really suffuse their clothes with kind of a richness of character, really, and also kind of a social commentary. You think of the zip card in terms of under 16s, and yeah, it's nostalgia for Saul, but it's also important. It's an important kind of socio-political commentary on disadvantaged youth and disadvantaged kids, and the fact that we do need these programs to push forward so that all of us have opportunities to learn and to educate and to be educated. We need that access. And to Stephen Stokey's collection, he kind of deconstructed not clothes, but kind of simplicity of the way that men and boys speak and do things, like kind of taking away the stench of insecurity and hiding behind, like, as a man I do this, as a man I do that, as a man this is what this means to me, or like, I'm a grown-ass man. You hear that all the time, and it's just like, it gets wearisome, and like, you know, he's attractive, you know, I don't go that way, or he's attractive if you're gay.
Especially in that elite British school system, which is very much what he's speaking to in that language of clothing that he plays with.
Exactly, like assigning those sects to just like, all right, you're public school, you're private school, you're from a council house, doing that to open it up, giving specific roles to each. It was a play, giving each of these kind of societal roles to each actor, these class roles, kind of humanized it a bit. So we didn't really see the representation. We saw them actually doing the class status, which I think connected to the audience in an important way. So you've got Saul Nash here, and you've got Stokey Daley here. One really cool aspect of what Stokey did was, and this is going somewhere. There was a point in the play where the boys are playing football, and the soundtrack while they were playing football was a house song by Lynn, who is a Midwestern house producer. She's black, she's female, and she's lesbian. So you had this weird fourth dimensional kind of like stereotypical trope of maleness at play with this like really awesome, just like lesbian house fucking genius, really. She's brilliant. And so I thought that was really powerful, and it gave a cosmic approach to how like Simple Catwalk show turns into like a magazine biannual, really, because you have all of these narratives at play and they're articulated into the garment. So you just don't think this is an editorial here clothes, you think of big ideas, and then that makes the clothes richer. And that's kind of what happened with Ed Crutchley, right? Ed Crutchley he used pop songs. He used Montero, by Lil Nas X. He used 50 Cent's Candy Shop. He closed with Sylvester. He closed with Hathaway, and kind of added a bit of like classical music to them, the violin string section. And so he gave it this 18th century soundtrack with 18th century tropes, but sissified. So you had the Rococo, which is his provenance in a way with his print working. So you had the Rococo print, you had bustles, you had like all articulated like swing jackets, you had like swimsuits on like buff boys, and you had like 70s seafoam green like Lurexy bits, Lurex suiting. And so like he kind of conceptualized queerness and kind of like fabulous sass, again, to like give the clothes feeling, because Ed Crutchley's clothes, they're lovely, but they don't really make you feel something from time to time. You had a real sense of like, this is a real gays gay collection, it's like it's wrong, but it's like right, but it's kind of both. And so he's like, yeah, let me author something here, because this is my world, I just never show it, so it's time for me to take my pants off. And so yeah, I think that kind of set up what we're going to go into next.
Yeah, I mean, you've just said what I was thinking of saying, right, which is what I've really come away from this fashion week is so wrong but so right.
Yeah. Exactly.
And we were kind of talking earlier about sex gone wrong, repulsive femininity.
Oh yeah.
But then tied in with that, a real stepped up sophistication, and we saw that theme really run through so many collections.
Yeah.
That kind of idea of Prada ugliness, unsexy but sexy.
Yeah.
We went to a little sneak peek of J.W. Anderson, which is rumoured to drop tomorrow. We're filming this on Monday night. It's rumoured to drop on Tuesday, but they've got a few pieces in the Soho store.
Yeah.
And they were kind of sticky PVC pinks with then Lurex. And these kind of oversized heeled sandals in like squidgy kind of cushions.
Yeah, so wrong and so sick, but also kind of sweet. You think of that Madonna Pharrell song, 666, sticky and sweet, and that was it, with this like the pink plastic dress with the red rope licorice kind of glitterified, threaded through the garment and twisting and twirling in the back. It was just like so gross. And then that plastic bangle dress, I think it was in the middle. Yeah, just, oh my God, so gross, but so kind of good though.
Yeah, kind of good and kind of like icky and sexy. And that brings me on to the big Carrie Bradshaw vibe at Supriya Lele this morning, which I loved, and was kind of a segue into more kind of sticky sexiness that she's done before.
Absolutely.
But really amped up. A highlight of this collection was kind of sequin fishnets, which ran throughout.
Oh yeah.
The Bottega green, which everyone is mad for, but done in this kind of, you really put it really right, this kind of tissue paper fabric and wraparound skirts and trousers. And it was this sophistication, really elevating the Supriya kind of tailoring and drapery.
Touches back into what we were saying about clothes and personality, giving it a real feel by using a human being.
Definitely, giving it a woman that needs to be wearing it. And I think that's definitely the same for Nensi Dojaka.
Oh my God. Yeah, like kind of taking real people, i.e. Helmut Lang and Christopher Kane, and trying to give a feeling. I don't know if she succeeded. Check out our review to find out what we really thought. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the technique, she definitely elevated a bit. You think of her clothes and
LVMH winning.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, and so that will definitely elevate things as the money and the mentorship comes through. But usually her clothes look like they'll just fly away. They look kind of like cut and pasted together. And they were still that, but there was a real strength there and actually more coherency. She also integrated some suiting into everything. Had these real hard boning football, Rick Owens, Larry Legaspi shoulders. And so you got more of a coherent, kind of a full-bodied aesthetic. You know?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think the wear is so important in this. That was really felt at Rejina Pyo. The casting was absolutely fantastic, a real range of women. The Rejina Pyo brand is really about her designing for her. It started her designing for her and her friends and wanted to make clothes that women felt they could wear and that were accessible and that were everyday wardrobe pieces but that felt slightly elevated, and it really felt like that. It was staged in the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park in the pool. Very, very, again, another very hot venue, very humid.
Yes.
But a lot of kind of sheer looseness. Again, more of this fishnet and a kind of sequin dress, which was the closing look. More, yeah, a lot of that green again. Really great kind of asymmetric, sheer, almost sheer kind of jersey stretch. So a lot of that idea of stretch, holding the body, kind of push and pull, and again that kind of sticky sexiness.
Yeah.
And I think sexiness we can't talk about without talking about the Charlotte Knolls brand,
Yeah,
now known as Knolls.
A lot of sex with Knolls, kind of off-puttingly sexy in terms of the colors and also the personalities that she did. She also used a lot of mesh, which ties into dance hall. But yeah, she had a lot of cues, and it's like she took those personalities and kind of sex and just dipped it in raw sewage for kind of a filthy, off-putting situation. And you know, if you love it and you're that type of person, then you go thought the house down next summer. You go thought girl summer, thought boy summer, and you just get it. Or thought them summer. We can't leave anyone out with that one.
Yeah, and I mean Charlotte Knolls is such a popular brand now, very, very iconic, kind of visually aesthetic wise. And I think thinking about London designers and having their kind of codes, I think that idea of refining codes also came up a lot this season, and we were really, really pleased to see. I think a great example of that was Stefan Cook, who we saw this morning.
Oh my god. Okay, so Stefan Cook. Stefan and I spoke last year, and one thing that we talked about was his MA, because personally it's one of the great things he and Jake have ever done. He said they always reference the MA. And just in looking at the collection today, after the show, I noticed the dancing ladies, right? And we talked about that shirts with you. The dancing ladies are kind of holding hands, and that goes back to the MA. It's a similar geometric shape to the Fair Isle kind of like zigzag jagged thing that he did for the MA. You also think about the bandeau bits, which I was thinking kind of irregular, but they're also the trousers from the same collection, which he also did for current fall. You know, they always go back to the MA. And even though, you know, personally I saw a little Gilbert and George here with the newsboy caps and the makeup, and some Boy London bits with the bombers, it can be what you think it is, but also this is what it is. And they go back in time, they bring it forward.
Someone else actually who went back to that MA was Molly Goddard. She kind of started doing these smock dresses on her MA. I believe it was on her BA, and then she revisited on her MA, but it was getting the patterns of her baby clothes and blowing them up, and she did that again this season. With also some more menswear in there, but I thought the real strength was that she put these massive smock dresses on men as well. And it was really about, she's just had a baby and she was thinking about making memories with her newborn son and also her own memories as a child. And that idea of motherhood then kind of segued into Simone Rocha this afternoon, and that was all about kind of motherhood and childhood. In my review I really spoke about it being this kind of childhood wonder, not only because her and children were kind of in the front row and her little girl was kind of taking photos and literally gaping at how fun it all was, but you know, these kind of cocooning silhouettes that Simone does so well were kind of, you know, you had like sheer dresses which were then layered under with these massive tulle skirts, kind of buoyant down the runway, really playful, but at the same time very regal and serene and serious. It was held in St. Bartholomew's Church, and again this idea of childhood fantasy really came through, I thought, for me in the styling. There was this kind of sticky glitter hair, which we also saw at Charles actually, which I managed to spot.
On our tippy toes.
Yeah, and the models were wearing little beaded crowns. The dresses were kind of lined with pearls, which is something that Simone revisits again and again, but the pearls were kind of jingling as they went down the runway. It was really, really gorgeous. And to me that collection kind of looked like a child had run into their mother's wardrobe and mixed pieces, you know, kind of knit, sliced together with dresses and things like that. And that idea of kind of heritage and craft that Simone works with so well just was elevated by this childhood kind of joy. And I think craft we can't talk about without talking about Matty Boven.
Yeah, completely. You think about Simone Roche and craft and codes, and Matty kind of did that too, right? He goes back into his past, specifically his fashionista incubator period, and he's revisiting things. He's revisiting strings. He's revisiting knit, and he corrugates it into this like modern explosion of just like, well, now it's really excellent, isn't it? You know, like it's not just knit and chevrons, but cartoon lightning chevrons, right? It's not just grandma's doilies, but it's Pashmina's accounts, baby. Like it's everything that you want and everything you didn't think you wanted maybe 4 years ago, what you really want it now. And I think he did a great job, particularly with the bustles from its debut collection, updating those to something a little more ballet-ic, dare I say, and kind of like more movement centric versus like I am wearing the gown. So yeah.
And it was really done in this beautiful way of Matty's always been really interested in the idea of the glitch, and he kind of explored that further this season with this idea of kind of hypercraft. It was presented in a film by Ruth Hogben, which was kind of glitching, and the models were set in this kind of blown up version of his kind of ideal dollhouse, which I thought was really fun and beautiful.
We had both he and Simone. We had Richard Malone did that too as well, where they revisited their past and kind of like projected it into like the present. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, Richard Malone was so beautiful. It was held at the V&A, unveiled a collaboration with Mulberry, and especially you really highlighted this in our review, that the way that he's genuinely collaborated with a British brand but updated it and made it his really shows and highlights how good Richard is at taking craft and ideas such as sustainability and really exploring them genuinely. He works with a very, very close clientele. He doesn't do, you won't go into a store and find his stuff there. It has to be made to order, and working in that very, very intimate way. And I think this return with a physical show in the V&A felt justified, and it felt like a real celebration of British craft and what that should be. And I think someone else who was exploring that as well, this idea of using the opportunity to push craft as much as they can, was Michael Halpen. Michael just did a film. I forgot to mention actually, Regina had at the beginning of her show divers going off the platforms from Team GB. Performance sports. And Michael was another person who decided to kind of call on athletic people to work with him. He worked with the Royal Ballet, and that was really beautiful to see them in this film. This kind of juxtaposition between being constricted in these kind of pom-pom confectionery gowns, which he did last season, but really developed this time around, that kind of constriction, but then they're moving in a film. And fringe. You love the fringe. I love the ostrich feathers.
And the Versace dress.
The Versace dress. And we love the sequins again, that kind of glitz and glam was coming through again. And I think that Michael was someone who, very much like a lot of other people in the industry, was a bit apprehensive about doing film, but has really enjoyed it and decided to run with it. And he was saying to us, which is something that I think is a message that we need to take forwards, is that present either a runway show, do a film, do a lookbook, but do it based on the season and what works for those clothes and what tells that story right.
Yeah, I really like the vulnerability of Michael. He was very honest and very naked in that. Presentation, the conversation where he's like, look, I'm not a filmmaker. I don't do what SHOWstudio does. I don't do fashion film very well. And so it's
but he does do it very well.
Yeah, it's like, well, then you don't know what you do, because this is really
brilliant.
Really good way to communicate your work.
And I think it shows that what this kind of past year has fostered is a very, very obviously scary time, a time of change where people have been forced to try new things, but what's come out of it is some brilliant creativity. And I think this return to London Fashion Week was completely justified, and it was a brilliant mixture of physical and digital, and I hope that moving forwards we continue to see that.
Yeah, let's just get a mixture of seating and standing when we attend our final shows of the season next year.
Yes. Well, you can view all of the collections on SHOWstudio.com, and you can watch all of our live reviews. We will be back very soon with reviews coming to you from Milan and Paris. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye.